Hey readers, my name is Jess, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in October, so let's get into it. The first book that I read this month was The Forest Where the Phoenix Sleeps by Brooke Marley-Jones, and this is a self-published book with a really interesting fantasy setting, but I would say the plot is more romance-focused. It's about a world where humans with magic are creating quite a spectacle on Earth. All over the news, there are these stories of creepy and strange deaths linked to an unknown magic, and Nell, a barista, is very intrigued. She even wonders if she could be one of those magical misfits. Then, when she's walking home from work one day, she defends a young girl who needs help and accidentally kills the man attacking her, seemingly with magic. The whole thing is kind of a blur though, and when she wakes up, she's in a cottage in this terrifying otherworldly place with a big mysterious man who claims he was just trying to save her by bringing her here. Now Nell has to navigate life in this frightening new world where she sort of doesn't belong with her new companion, who she may or may not be crushing on, and let me tell you, this place is out to get her. I thought the author did a great job of balancing the horror elements with humor. The vibe of the story is very magical and creepy, which I really liked, and I think the ideas behind this book are interesting. Honestly though, I just didn't feel super connected to the characters or find them particularly likable. On top of that, there's this huge bombshell dropped at the end that left me disgusted, and unfortunately I think that will be the one part of the story that stays with me against my will. I also felt like I never knew what direction the story was going in, which I guess could be intriguing for some, but for me, it wasn't. I just didn't feel like I had that clear of an understanding of the storyline in this one, and it felt a little disjointed. However, if this story sounds interesting to you, I would recommend checking out other reviews. There are a ton of really positive ones on Goodreads. Just because this book didn't work for me and I can't personally recommend it, doesn't mean I can't understand that other people may enjoy it. Now on to a book that is definitely more my speed. Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. This is the perfect epic fantasy book. Genuinely everything from the characters, the plot, the world building, the magic system, all perfect. This is a fantasy heist about an unfair government run by the Lord Ruler, who is rumored to be this sort of immortal god, and the noble houses that have their own power and wealth. The Ska are the common people in the city that are treated horribly, living in poor conditions and constantly being beaten, killed, or assaulted. Anyway, we follow a rebellious group that is unhappy with the state of their city and is seeking to overthrow the Lord Ruler. This is primarily a group of allomancers who have the ability to burn metal to unleash their magic. This could very well be the most skilled team possible, and still this task seems like a long shot. They want to put an end to the Lord Ruler's tyranny and inspire a change in the way their city is run. They want to free the people of Luthadel from oppression. I've wanted to read this for a really long time. I was watching Sanderson's lecture series on YouTube and wanted to kind of finish that before diving into this world. I knew that I really liked him and his ideas, but holy cow, I didn't realize that just reading his work would feel like a masterclass in storytelling. Sometimes I enjoy really lush and lyrical writing, but I kind of loved the simplicity of language in this one. It didn't feel plain, it was almost like it was one less distraction in this world with so much going on. And yes, there was a lot going on. You have this complex political order, a completely unique magic system, and many different characters carrying through on different parts of a grand scheme all at the same time. But Sanderson was able to execute this all in a very engaging way without ever info dumping or removing you from the story. I do want to restate that this is epic fantasy and it is masterfully crafted, and I think if you really like the genre, then you'll enjoy this story. I know I did, and that seems to be a very popular opinion. However, if you're someone who prefers romantasy, you're not going to get that here, and for good reason. This book doesn't need it. It has a tiny itty bitty bit of romance, and that romance is good, but it's nowhere near the main focus. And I found that there were more meaningful relationships and friendships in this story that did bring me to tears because they were so precious to me. Honestly, I picked up this book for the exciting adventure, but was left really touched by the themes of trust and friendship. So naturally, after finishing Mistborn, I immediately picked up book 2, The Well of Ascension. I can't say much about the plot because I refuse to even hint at the ending of book 1, but I will say this one addresses the challenge of leadership and the potential consequences of a revolution, and our characters are challenged and forced to grow in the face of change, and that's all I'm going to say about that. The fight scenes in both books were written so well. I always felt like I could imagine the characters so vividly that it felt like a movie, and was genuinely at the edge of my seat because it never felt like anyone was safe. I can understand that some readers may argue that the pacing in this series can be slow at times, but personally I found myself completely enthralled even during those slower parts because of how much I adored the characters. Plus, you know those last 150 pages are gonna go crazy. I actually read these 2 Mistborn books in the aftermath of a hurricane when I had no power for a week, and after the sun set and I was sitting in complete darkness, I would hold a 2-pound flashlight until my hands cramped because I didn't want to put these books down. They were that good. The next book that I picked up was Landlines by Rainer Wynn, and this is a really great memoir about a woman and her husband tackling a 1,000-mile trek across Britain. Ray's husband, Moth, has a neurodegenerative disease, and they begin to notice a decline in his health as his symptoms seem to worsen. Previously, they've been kind of able to keep his symptoms at bay by hiking trails and immersing themselves in nature, so they decide that they're going to take that approach again. But his health is the worst it's ever been, and this very well might be their last time hiking across the island. This is a really difficult and at times dangerous journey, and Ray and Moth definitely struggle at certain points, but you really have to admire their resilience and those little moments of hope amidst the challenge. More than anything, I love how the story wove together messages of life and human existence with the natural world. Wynn describes nature in such a lovely way, recounting wildlife and the ever-changing landscape as people continue to take control over our wild planet. And I have to say, in the world of conservation, it's almost too easy to blame people and see them as selfish and careless, which we certainly can be, but I love that Wynn highlighted the beauty of humankind as well, the love and passion and kindness and community as the couple meets new people along the way. I was very moved by this book, and I connected to it in a way that I didn't realize I would, and I really wanted to share this quote from it, if that's okay, because it really got me thinking. Books don't change lives. They could change how you think, but it's you that changed your life. You allowed the book to influence you, then you chose to change how you live. The power was always in you, the book just opened the door. So I love this because I haven't ever really thought about it this way, even though we so often say, oh my gosh, that book literally changed my life. As a reader, you are putting yourself in a position where you have the opportunity to be receptive and learn something from whatever you're reading. Similar to if someone is giving you advice, you have the option to listen and be responsive, or you can let it go in one ear and out the other. So if literature has an effect on you, then both you and the author deserve credit because they were able to plant the seed, but you chose to listen and respond to it, which is pretty cool too. Overall, this is an enjoyable nonfiction read filled with stunning imagery that I could see so clearly in my head, even never having visited Britain myself. And I think if you're outdoorsy, you might like this. Next, I picked up The Wild Huntress by Emily Lloyd-Jones, and this is a YA fantasy inspired by Welsh folklore. It's magical, enchanting, woodsy, action-packed, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So every 5 years, this event is held called the Wild Hunt, and no one really knows anything about the hunt besides the fact that many participants fail and even die. It's super dangerous, but if you end up as the champion, you are essentially granted a magical wish of your choosing. We follow Branwen, a human with an eye for magic who simply wants to care for her sick mother, and she's basically recruited by a prince named Gwydion, who has something to prove and a kingdom to save. He asks Branwen to accompany him to the hunt because she's a skilled hunter who has had success taking down monsters. Branwen and Gwydion really need to win, and they end up teaming up with another prince, Pryderi, who is the son of a king but was raised by monsters, and he doesn't really know what that makes him, so he's hoping the trials will give him a better idea of who he truly is. And as our team of 3 embarks on this nearly impossible challenge, we get to see them open up to one another and find friendship in this game that is essentially pure violence, fighting monsters and trying to gain power. It definitely won't be easy. There will be lots of bloodshed and creepy magical creatures from Welsh mythology. I love that all 3 characters have their moment. They are all given time and attention on the page, so I really cared for all of them, understanding their backgrounds, motivations, and challenges. This is another ELJ book in the same world as The Bone Houses and The Drowned Woods, but what I love about these stories is that even though they all take place in the same world, they are all so unique and different from one another. But at the same time, there are fun references to the other books, and the magic systems, of course, overlap. She just focuses on different magic for each character or story, which means that as long as Jones keeps writing these books, I'm probably gonna keep reading them and enjoying them. And I have to say, the last third of this book is insane. I did get off to a bit of a slow start, but once our characters got to the hunt, I seriously could not put this book down. The twist had me feeling betrayed in the best way. I loved it. I seriously think this is Jones' greatest novel yet. The last book that I read this month was Brotherless Night by V.V. Ganeshananthan. This is a story of the Sri Lankan Civil War through the lens of a young Tamil girl named Sashi who is studying in school to be a doctor. The story starts in Jaffna, 1981, when Sashi is just 15 years old, and she walks us through the beginning stages of this conflict that will then continue in Sri Lanka for nearly 3 decades. When we first meet Sashi, she has great ambition for the future. She admires her brothers and hopes to pursue medicine like her grandfather. Unfortunately, her community soon becomes one tense with conflict due to discrimination and human rights violations. The Tamil Tigers militant group rises, striving for the independence of Tamil citizens, and 2 of Sashi's brothers and her childhood crush are swept up in the cause. However, even with her brother's involvement, she's not quite sure if the group deserves her support, as they often resort to violence and cruelty to send their message. Over the next several years, Sashi shares her experience as a student and a sister at the time, and her life is turned upside down as she experiences loss of loved ones, displacement, and even just adjusting to a life of constant fear. While in university, she is recruited by the Tigers to be a medic treating both militants and people who may not be offered medical attention elsewhere. She still doesn't know where she stands with the Tigers because they are responsible for so much devastation themselves, but ultimately she wants to help people, so she takes the position. Around the same time, one of her professors inspires her to question the groups behind these violent tactics that seem to be taking over, and she decides that these violations of human rights in her own community must be exposed. She hasn't truly been safe since the war started, but she's now putting herself in the most dangerous position yet. And that's essentially what this book is. Sashi is speaking directly to you as the reader, to the point where it feels very much like a memoir, like a survivor sharing their story. She'll often say something like, "You need to understand," which to me acted sort of like a reality check. Sashi may be fictional, but her story of being a daughter and sister and student at the time is one that I'm sure represents so many. And to my understanding, there are a few characters, such as Anjali the professor, that are inspired by real activists and historical figures. I was certainly engaged in this story. This was the first time I was learning about the atrocities of this war, and this book isn't long, it's under 350 pages, but it did take me about 5 days to read. Just because, while never gory, it was a lot for me to take in, and it was very shocking to learn about this historical event. I definitely enjoy picking up books that can inform me of moments in history that I may not have learned about or even been aware of through my own schooling. This book is well written and informative and has such a strong voice, and if it sounds like something you might enjoy, I would definitely recommend it. So those are all of the books that I read in October. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and maybe I'll see you next time. Bye!